So we're 1 week into the search for the missing boy in Donabate, and obviously the guards have been excavating the area particularly carefully. They seem to have brought in a digger to scrape some of the surface yesterday. But I suppose that the fallout continues, I suppose, and more details have emerged about I suppose the background of the parents and what may have happened that night.
Yeah, so it's been reported in the last few days, including by Sunday World, that the Irish-born father of the boy is living in Brazil. He's remarried over there, and he has been in contact with the Gardaí in relation to the disappearance of his son. The Gardaí haven't travelled there, but that might be an option for them. And I suppose there has been conflicting theories emerging.
Well, conflicting accounts, I suppose.
Conflicting accounts emerging of what may have happened, but one theory that has been told to Gardaí is that the boy was found ice cold in his bed, that he died of natural causes in his sleep, that he was put into a bath in an attempt to revive him. And when that didn't work, there was panic and he was put into a hold-all bag and carried 3 kilometres. The search site it's off the Portran Road in Donabate. It's about a 4-minute drive from the accommodation the boy was living in. That happened in the middle of the night after he was found, and that would have been 4 years ago.
Yeah.
So that's one of the theories Gardaí were told, but there has been a conflicting accounts. And obviously, I think initially it's been reported that Gardaí were confident they might find him quite quickly, and that hasn't happened. This is now the 7th day of searching happening there. But it is a massive site and there's a lot of hedgerows and, difficult terrain.
Yeah, I mean, I think, as we said in the podcast before, that they didn't think that they would get to the point of finding him or even not finding him straight away, that this is going to be very painstaking, that they're going to uncover the ground really slowly, that they're going to, that they have a specific area that they want to look at, but it's being treated like a crime scene effectively.
Yeah.
And they don't, there's not a rush to bring in, to just go in and straight away and dig, Now, we do know a bit, I suppose, in that both parents, according to reports and according to everything we hear, that both parents are still engaging with the Gardaí, and that there have been different accounts given at different times from people, but the guards may ultimately have considered flying over to Brazil.
Yeah, so both parents have, as you said, spoken to Gardaí, and both are adamant that he died of natural causes. But obviously the investigation, as you said, has a long way to go. What's been reported is by our colleagues in The Independent is that the boy was living in shared accommodation when he was born, and that the mother didn't want him to be raised in shared accommodation, so there was engagement with Tusla, and for 18 months the boy was put into foster care, and then the mother had a change of heart, decided that she wanted her child back, and he was returned. Tusla have said that they always want to try and reunify families where possible with their, with their support. And this happened in this case. And then shortly after 2020, as far as we're aware, Tusla didn't have any more contact with them. And then the Gardaí believed that the boy would have died around 2 years after this, so about 4 years ago. But the parents were living in this shared accommodation. They were not together, I think, at the time, but they were raising their child. And when the boy was returned, the mother had moved to an apartment and was able to provide him with a stable home. That's what's been reported. But since then, obviously, the couple separated and the dad has been traced to Brazil.
So what's essentially being said is that there's a child ends up in foster care in many different ways. But let's put it down to 2 different ways. It's one where the state intervenes and said this child isn't safe, and the child is going to be taken into foster care.
Yeah.
And then there's voluntary foster care, where a parent says, the state doesn't intervene, the state doesn't take the child off the parents without the parents' consent. The parents consent to the child going into foster care. So when a child goes into foster care voluntarily, it's very different. There may be, basically the parent who gives the child into foster care still has a good bit of a say over what happens. They don't have to sign over rights to Tusla. Tusla generally check up with them, but it's a very different thing that if the state says, well, we're going to take this child off because it's not safe.
Yeah.
So what happens in that case is that if a child is being considered for adoption, certainly back then, the child would have been under the care of adoption social workers, as opposed to, probably they would have led it, and because it's a voluntary placement, they would have maybe started, they would have maybe begun the proceedings of seeking to go through the system with the biological parents, biological mother, and then maybe begin a process of trying to assess if there's another parent or whatever. It takes a lengthy period of time, but that's all voluntary.
Yeah.
Now, Tusla have released a statement basically saying it is, to paraphrase it, it's their policy to reunify with biological parents. And that is the case.
Yeah.
That is Tusla's policy. The issue, of course, arises here is that this policy has been followed. This child has gone back.
Yeah.
And something terrible has happened. Right?
Yeah.
Like that's beyond doubt.
Yeah.
Now, I'll just read out, somebody did contact Nicola, and it's a fair point, and I'm just going to read out a flavour of it. Basically, I said that there should be follow-up to every child referred into Tusla, and somebody saying this is basically a mad statement that there's only so much that Tusla can feasibly do.
Yeah.
There has to be changes to the schooling, preschooling, public health, nurse system where all children are linked with. And the book does not stop with Tusla alone. Now, that person who wrote in very reasonable letter or reasonable email saying that, that Tusla can't be held solely responsible, nor that person saying that Tusla are, beyond reproach.
No.
But what we're getting to the point is, right?
Yeah.
There's been a lot of complex commentary on this, but we have to start from the point that something terrible has happened.
Yeah.
Okay? And something terrible happened with the Kyron Durnan case, which has similarities, even though they're totally unconnected and separate cases.
Yeah.
So what we're getting to the point is saying, how can this not happen?
Yeah.
Now, that person is undoubtedly correct. Tusla don't have the resources to constantly check up all of these cases. I mean, something was going on. That certainly is an explanation that the parents didn't want them living in crowded accommodation or whatever. Whether it's more complicated than that, I don't know.
Yeah. And it has been said with the Kyron Durnan case, there has been people who know the system better than us speak out as well and say that, there's massive issues with staffing, under resources in Tusla, and that is fair enough. But I guess the question here, or the concern here, is that this is the second child who we know of that has been missing for several years before it came to the knowledge of the authorities. And I guess what I have noticed in terms of reading Tusla's statement is that absolutely makes sense that they see the importance of children living with their families and reunifying them where possible. And, they say in the statement, while each case is dealt with on an individual basis, decisions to reunify children are made with careful assessment and consultation with parents, family and professionals involved with the family, which makes total sense. And it has been reported that Gardaí, that none of the family had come to any adverse attention from the Gardaí before, and that there was no concerns about the child's upbringing in the home. It was, as you said, a voluntary decision to put him into foster care. But I guess the thing about the statement is, I totally get the desire to reunify children with their family. But I guess it's, they talk about careful assessment and consultation. But from what we have come to understand since this case came into the news was that from 2020, when he was returned, there wasn't really any contact with Tusla. So maybe it's for people better than me to know that. But there has been concerns about that, like how that happened. And
look, somebody's written in and saying that's unrealistic, that Tusla would continue to check up. But you can't get past the point that something terrible has happened here and that people were unaware of it. Now, the Dr. Niall Muldoon, the Ombudsman for Children, has come out really strongly about this, and he said it's shocking that a child who at one point was known to Tusla could have disappeared and is presumed dead. And he says it's horrible to see this case happening. And he also referenced Kyron Dern and say we've now had 2 children disappear off the face of this earth. And he says, he basically says these things need to be reported. There needs to be public reports on these things.
Yeah.
And that it doesn't have to impede Garda investigations. And he said learnings shouldn't compromise an investigation. Engage with Gardaí and ask, what can we say here? So he's basically said that the Kyra Durnan case has been at this body, the MPR, for over a year, and we still haven't seen any public reporting on it.
No.
We know in this case that this child he's talking about this most recent child, that this child had contact with Tusla up until 2020, but after that very little is known, as it appears he just silently disappeared.
Yeah.
Same as Kyron Durnan did a little over a year ago.
Yeah.
And yet we have no answers or insights into the role of the services with Kyron and what, if anything, could have been done to have prevented his disappearance. And I suppose that's what I was trying to say.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know if that's Tusla's job to have that constant monitoring. I don't know whose job exactly that is. And his point is, Dr. Niall Muldoon's point is, well, of course we don't know whose job it is because nobody has published a report that will get to the core of how this could not happen again. And
we're never given those answers in public anyway. It's always...
Well, that's his point.
Yeah.
Why aren't we given these answers?
Yeah, I totally agree.
And if it's not Tusla's job to monitor, like, whose job is it? And if certainly this person is writing in and saying preschool, schools, health nurses have a role, that seems totally sensible.
It does seem totally sensible, and I do get I totally get their point, but I guess, that it's unrealistic for Tusla to be expected to keep in contact with this family. But this was a family who openly said they were struggling and this child needed to be put into care, and then he's put back, and obviously they were happy with the situation, but things can change. And surely somebody, maybe it's not Tusla's responsibility, but surely if you're putting a vulnerable child back into a setting, there has to be some kind of means to follow up. And maybe
there has to be.
If it's not Tusla, as that person is saying, then who is it, I suppose? And in relation to Kyron Durnan, I think there's an education report being compiled too, because his school in County Louth was essentially told Kyron's moving to the north, but there seemed to have been no interaction between schools. And then when he was reported missing 2 years later, it was realised that he never attended any other school after that one in Louth. So again, so this person might be right, it's not for Tusla, it's for schools, it's for the education department,
but you're still going to have somebody in charge of it.
Yeah, of course.
Because if it's just a matter of everybody should contribute, somebody has to oversee these things. And we know this from any sort of bureaucracy, and we work in a bureaucracy as well. Unless somebody's assigned to be in charge of it, and you can't have everybody just in charge of it, or things don't happen.
Yeah.
So I don't know, and you'd like to think that out of these 2 cases, something better will emerge. I mean, a child, the policy of the state, and we voted on a referendum to ensure this, that the best interest of the child should always come first.
Of course.
And that's now in our law, really.
Yeah.
And where is the best interest of the child in this? I mean, if a child is in a family that are under extreme pressure, and you have to be under extreme pressure to consider giving your child up for adoption. I mean, and we understand that the reports say that, they were in too cramped housing. A lot of people, are in cramped housing, and they would never consider that. So, but look, there may have been extreme circumstances, but if Tusla decide to reunify the child, does that file get sent anywhere else? Do the adoption social workers say, well, the child's not being adopted, so our role is end, which is possibly not unreasonable.
Yeah.
But is there no oversight? I don't know. And maybe somebody else will write in and tell us how it should happen.
Exactly, yeah.
But I can tell you, We shouldn't be allowing children to drop off the face of the earth,
100%.
as Dr. Muldoon says, and we should not be tolerating that in modern Ireland.
No, and I think we have to continue to ask these questions, because it was the same in the Kyron Durnan case. He wasn't in the care of Tusla, so he wasn't actually taken into their care, but he did have engagement with them, and it was actually somebody that wasn't Kyron presented as him on some meetings with them as well. So that's another example of him slipping through the cracks. And yeah, maybe it wasn't fully Tusla's responsibility because he wasn't in their care, but he was engaging with them. So who is looking at this? And
it has to be somebody taking responsibility. And Dr. Muldoon, and I know there's been a bit of pushback against him again, but it doesn't. It seems like a sensible point.
Exactly. And as the point has been source quoted in the Irish Independent article, is that, he may still be here if he wasn't, if he was left in foster care. We don't know that, but I suppose that's a fair point to make. And it's also a fair point to say about, asking these questions, because how else are we going to know? It's mental that we can be in 2025 where 2 children have been missing for several years and nobody knows where they are. And I know there's a lot of difficult backgrounds and a lot of,
well, look, the state can't mitigate against everything. That's true, of course.
Yeah.
And of course, when you're dealing with something at the front end of things like child protection, or the guards are dealing with issues, of course tragedies occur, but there has to be learnings as well.
Yeah, and I suppose the most important point is that it can't be that somebody has to put in a claim for child benefit for them to realise that this child hasn't actually attended school when they would have been 7. So this is how it obviously came to light. And the fact that it was basically just if that hadn't happened, we still wouldn't have known about this. So there has to be a better way.
Yeah, there does. Okay, no doubt we'll be returning to this. A very, very tragic and sad story.
Yeah.
Thanks, Eimear.
Thanks, Niall.
I'm Nicola Tallant, and you're watching Crime World, a podcast about criminals, drugs and the underworld in Ireland and across the globe. Make sure you subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications so you can be the first to watch all our latest episodes. You can also listen wherever you get your podcasts.